And I remember telling my wife, Michelle, when I went back to school, she said, "What are you doing this for?" And I said, "Well, this is sort of my midlife crisis." I said, "I could have gone out and bought a Corvette.
Yeah.
I could have went and spent, $60,000 for a new Corvette, but look at all of this extra stuff I
Yeah.
gained by doing this. This extra knowledge, these extra connections, this network, this ability to teach the next generation of people. It was just so impactful to my own life
Mm.
that here we are. I'm sitting here talking to you about it today, and it is.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Rocking Midlife podcast. And I have a wonderful guest today, Dr. Robert Forto, who's tuning in all the way from Alaska. So welcome, Robert. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show. I'm excited about doing this and happy tomorrow where you're at for sure.
I can tell you tomorrow's looking pretty good at the moment, except for the tropical storm bearing down on us, but you're not going to have that issue. So
Of course.
this should be great for you. Okay, so for everyone listening in, we're going to be talking a little bit about the trails to the classroom and lessons learned from sled dogs and going back to college at midlife. So Robert lives in the wilds of Alaska and he has a team of sled dogs, which in itself is absolutely fascinating. For me, who's barely seen snow in my whole life, the fact that you actually live in that environment, I can't wait to hear about it. And he teaches leadership at university level, teaching concepts of teamwork and leadership from running these sled dogs. So let's just dive on in, Robert. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you ended up living in Alaska, working with sled dogs, and how that's now taken you to teaching at university level all about leadership.
Well, I could probably talk for hours, but we'll
That's
kind of
okay.
be yeah, quick and dirty. I started my entrepreneurial career, I guess, at about the age of 10 or 11 when I had a paper route like a lot of
Uh-huh.
kids do in the US, and I was hiring the little kids in the neighborhood to pass out the papers, and of course, I was collecting the money from the clients, if you know
That
what
is
I mean.
clever. That is
Yes,
clever.
I started very early on, and then fast forward to my early college career in 1989, 1990. I went into university to hopefully become a veterinarian, but I
Mhm.
quickly learned that I didn't want to spend all of my time in a veterinary office, so I wanted to be outside.
Yeah.
So I started dog training in the parks of Portland, Oregon, and I literally started that business with a business card, a leash, and a smile, and that turned into
Love it.
a lifelong career with sled dogs. Became a professional dog trainer in 1994. At about the same time, I started dog mushing, and we'll talk much more about that
Yeah.
later on. And that's been going on for many years. Fast forward to when my daughter was graduating high school, we went down and visited the local university, and she pretty much gave me a bet or a dare, if you will. She said, "Dad, I bet I can finish college before you do." So I said, "Nicole, I'll take you up on that bet." And I enrolled in college for a second time in 2014. I was 44 years old at the time. Got my second bachelor's degree in 2018, a master's in management in 2020, right on the cusp of the
Yes.
pandemic,
Yes.
and finished up my doctorate in last November. So in 2024, I finished that. And of course, I've been teaching university classes and
Oh my
talking about
gosh. Well, first of all, hang on. Congratulations. Like, that is phenomenal. I mean, just going back and doing any study is a bit of a mind bender when you're in midlife. But to go
right?
on and do the entire thing, the bachelor's, master's, PhD, like, congratulations. Like, that is amazing.
Well, thank you very much. It was definitely a trial by fire. I was doing everything I possibly could to get through there. But now, Kat, I have all this time on my hands and I don't know what to do with myself.
Well, first of all, did you beat your daughter?
I did. She is going back to university here in the fall, probably 10 years later to finish up her degree, and I hope she does well.
Oh, good for her. What a good
Yeah.
girl. Well, what a role model dad, too. That's amazing. You gave your word and you fulfilled it, even though it wouldn't have been easy. So you were living in Oregon. So did you then relocate to Alaska, or have I just got my states and things all mixed up here?
Well, there's some other parts of that story, but, I was in Oregon for quite a while, went to Minnesota. My grandfather passed away, and he had a cabin up there, so being a, young man in my early 20s, I thought, "What an adventure to move out of the city and into the country in northern Minnesota,"
Hmm.
and that's where I started my sled dog, kennel and career there, and that went on for several years, ended up meeting my wife who lived in Colorado, who was also involved with dog sports and stuff, so moved
Right.
from Minnesota to Colorado. That's where we started up a pretty successful dog training business there, and pretty much one day I said, "Hey, I have this dream that I want to fulfill of one day running the Iditarod sled dog race. Would you think about moving to Alaska?" And of course, she was very supportive. And in 2010, I guess it is, I'm trying to think all the dates, when you're telling stories, but 2010, we moved up to Alaska. So we've been here just about 15 years now, and we love it.
And is it very different to where you were living down south there?
Well, we were living in the mountains outside of Denver. So other than pretty much being as far away as you can possibly be from everything in the United States. People in the US think that Alaska is its own country. When we say that we're gonna order things off of Amazon, they say, "We don't deliver to Alaska because you're not in the United States." So,
Oh,
living in New Zealand, you quite understand how difficult it is to live in the middle of nowhere.
yeah, yeah. It makes travel that much more expensive and that much longer. So, climate wise, how many months a year are you sort of snowbound there?
Well, let's see. We have pretty long winters here. We're just coming into spring right now here when we're recording this towards mid-April. I guess we got our first batch of snow right around Halloween, and it typically melts about now, but we had a very slow snow year, not much snow at all. So we're about 50-50, I guess, winter
Right.
and other, if you will.
And are you able to get out and about much with all that snow? Again, I'm talking as someone who literally has only seen snow, I think, twice in my life, let alone how you live in it.
I love the snow. Last year, not this previous year, but the one before, I think we had about 14 feet of snow
Oh my
over the
gosh.
winter, so that's quite a bit. So yeah, we get out and about. Of course, a lot of shoveling, a lot of extra work goes involved with all of that. But it's the price you pay for what we do up here with our sled dogs. But summers are absolutely amazing. I think it's a very similar or climate
Mm.
to where you're at in the summer. Beautiful days
Yeah.
here. Of course, we have the what they call the land of the midnight sun up here, so it never gets dark in the summer,
Oh,
but it's
wow.
always dark in the winter. So we kind of deal with it.
Wow. Now, see, that would be just mind blowing as well. So I guess you
Yeah.
all have blackout blinds and things like that, do you? Do you stick to a regular routine?
That took for years to get used to. I remember
Yeah.
the first couple of years here, I was out mowing the lawn at midnight and having barbecues at 11 p.m. because it
Yeah.
wasn't dark enough to figure it out. But my goodness, it took a long time to get used to being able to sleep. So yeah, we ended up having to get some blackout blinds and all that. But I'm a winter guy. I like it when it's dark instead of light all the time.
I have to confess I'm a bit the same. Probably my winter's not like your winter, but I actually love it when it's rainy and grey and misty and all of that. So I don't know. I think it's the introvert in me. I like to hibernate. Now we've
Right.
we've got to know these sled dogs. What do you do with these sled dogs, and what have you learned from them as your model for teaching leadership?
So first off, we do have 35 sled dogs, a lot of dogs to take care of. I literally live with a pack of dogs, and they've taught me everything I wanted to know, not only about the human canine bond, but teamwork and team building and uh, relationships and everything. I could probably go on, but they are the perfect teachers because when you get a group of them together, it's like corralling school kids, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yes.
Everybody's kind of going this that way, and when you have a bunch of kindergartners running around trying to get their own way, you learn very quickly who is the boss and who is not.
That's incredible. I'm presuming you didn't just start with 35. What did you do? Get one or two and then it kind of grew from there? Or have you bred your own or are you bringing them in from elsewhere?
A little of all the same, as you say. I did start with a couple. The foundations of the kennel were 2 dogs named Rutger and Reich. That was way back in 1994. Those were Siberian Huskies.
Hmm.
Of course, 2 became 4, became 6, became 8, and so on and so forth. We don't do a lot of breeding here. I think in all of the years that we've lived in Alaska, we've only had 3 or 4 litters of puppies. A lot of our dogs come from, from friends and whatnot who have been involved with this sport or this lifestyle for a long time. We're very selective on the dogs that we get. We want the most high caliber dogs that we can possibly get. Of course, we don't need it's like drafting athletes in sports.
Mm,
You want to
yeah.
have best athletes you possibly can. So that's the
Yes.
way we look at it.
So what are some of these lessons that you've learned from how the pack interacts? So I'm presuming you're the pack head. Is that
Mhm.
right? They see you as the head, or do they see one of the dogs as the head?
Most likely they see me as the leader of the pack, if you
Hmm.
will. It's very similar to American football.
Which
I'm
is a
I'm
game
cons
that's really bizarre to me, but please go on.
Yes. And, of course, in American football, everybody knows who Tom Brady is, the top of the game, the quarterback, if you will. So our lead dogs are like the quarterback.
Uh-huh.
They're taking actions from the coach. They're the ones calling the plays. And then the next group of dogs are what we call swing or point dogs. Those are the dogs that are right behind the lead dogs. And those are sort of like your specialty players in football. They're the running backs and the wide receivers on the football team. And then you have your team dogs. So those are sort of the dogs that are sort of making up the bulk of the team. They're like the punter and the kicker and all of that in football. And then we have our wheel dogs, and those dogs are the dogs that are closest to the sled. Those are like the offensive linemen in football. They're the big, broody, muscular, meathead type dogs. They're the ones that are kind of just, plugging away, doing what they have to do. And
Yeah.
every dog in the team has a very specific role to do.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're the lead, you're sort of the lead dog, you're sort of telling everybody else where to go. And the wheel dogs, the dogs in the back, their job is to carry the weight, if you will. Their job is to have the business, if you will, on their shoulders. So that's one of the easier lessons that we can kind of figure out, that every dog in the team has a job to do, and everybody has to do their job well in order for the team to succeed. And that could be a parallel in just about any
Mm.
walk of life or business whatsoever. Just everybody has to pull their own weight.
Yeah, yeah. That's so cool. Now, to these dogs, do you identify those strengths in them from the personalities that they have when they come to you? Or do you specifically just go, right, now he's a big boy. He'll be one of those ones at the back. He's a bit wild. I'll throw him here to be looked after. I guess it's that nature versus nurture argument, isn't it? How much of it is what they bring to the table, and how much of it is you coaching them to be that person, that dog?
It's sort of the same,
Yeah.
both sides of that coin. There is some nature there, which, kind of that genetics and what do they have upstairs, if you know what I mean. And the other part does come from training. Some dogs are obviously excelling at one role over the other, just like us with people. Some of us are very book smart, if you will, who do very well in college or kind of knowledge, and other folks excel very well on more manual tasks, if you will. The kind of grunt work that they really excel with that. In our capacity, we try to train all of our dogs to do every position. So
Right.
even those brute kind of muscly type dogs, we will try to train if we can to have them move up to the leader position, because just like in any other team, you never know when you're going to have to step up. So
Right.
if one
Yeah.
leader falls down for one reason or another one has to take his place. So that's the way that we work.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. So I honestly, I'm just babbling here because I've just got so many questions, because it's just a world that I've never encountered before. So what do you use them for? Like, you've got these 35 odd dogs running around the house and all these sleds. Do you do tourist runs with them, or are you using them day to day for you to get around?
So
Yeah.
we do. three primary tasks with
Hmm.
our dogs. We do a little bit of racing. We have a pretty robust racing culture up here,
Wow.
including Rod, which is a worldwide race. I believe there's even been a racer or two from New Zealand back in the
Wow.
day. So
Okay.
there has been that. We do a little bit of um, of tours and that sort of thing, but not a whole lot. But our primary focus is, as you mentioned at the top of the show, we teach at the university level. We
Hmm.
teach dog and outdoor leadership using our sled dogs at the two local universities here in Alaska, University of Alaska Anchorage and Alaska Pacific University. And I believe the last time I checked, I was the only instructor anywhere in the country that offered that class. So we have a very unique class, and it's so unique. We've had students come up to us over the years and they say, I transferred to this college from wherever, whether it be in Ohio or Missouri or whatever. They'll say, I transferred here because I wanted to take your class as part of
Oh, how
my college
wonderful.
experience. And how cool is that? Is really being able to shape tomorrow's outdoor leaders, if you
Yes.
will, by taking our class. And I think that that's pretty special.
That is. I mean, I'm someone who did lecturing way back in the past myself. I wasn't at PhD level like you, but I did do lecturing in music education, and it's obviously wasn't as hands-on as what you're doing. And if you can find something that just absolutely grips students' attention, particularly gets them away from the passive learning that happens a lot these days on devices, that is incredible. That is something to be really proud of, and that would be such a unique type of classroom for so many of these students to actually encounter. I just think that's wonderful.
It's an amazing class. It's something obviously we're very proud to be able to offer. And a very quick aside from that, it is so cool where students will take your class and then many years later they'll see a picture of a dog or one of the team, on Instagram or Facebook, and they will comment all these years later and they'll say, "Oh my goodness, is that dog Wallace? Is that dog Gromit?" And they remember those dogs from so many years ago. And that just shows how much of an impactful lesson that they learned, even
Yes.
though it's just a quick picture on Instagram of a dog that somehow or another they made that connection and it just sticks with them. And I think that that's a cool way to really be engaged with not only students, but also the college experience.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Because while you're saying that, I'm thinking back to my own years at university. I studied at the Conservatorium of Music in Australia. And the funny thing is, I can only really remember one lecturer, and he was the one in our first year who had us dancing around doing silly things. And it was that movement, that hands-on type of teaching that does stay with you. And that's so cool. What do these students, what are a lot of them studying towards? What are they wanting to do with their degree that they earn?
Well, it's very interesting because the 2 colleges are so different.
Hmm.
I'll speak about the Alaska Pacific University first. That is a very small college, probably of about, I don't know, maybe 2,000 students, so not a very big school at all, but they have a very specialized program out there. They have an outdoor studies program, and a lot of these guys go on 2 tracks. They either do kind of an environmental track, if you will. They become a biologists and environmentalists and that sort of
Right.
thing.
Yep.
And then on the other side of the track, a lot of those guys are doing outdoor jobs, if you will. They're becoming guides and outdoor teachers, working in camps for kids and that sort of
Right.
stuff. But on the other side, at the University of Alaska Anchorage, that's one of our main state schools. We have one in Fairbanks and of course one here in Anchorage. So often those students are doing this more on an elective side. So they find out about this course and they may be an English major or a math major or a science major or something like that, and they have to take so many of these classes in order
Hmm.
to graduate. So often they're a little bit less involved, if you will, in the outdoors compared to
Yeah.
the other students at AP. They're doing this more of a well-rounded experience versus the other school as part of their requirement.
Yes. I love that it's not just you have to be in that particular stream of learning to have that experience, that, like you said, other students can have it to have more of a well rounded experience. Very, very cool. How do you find the students cope coming in when they first arrive and there's 35 odd dogs barking or jumping around? How do you get them from facing that to having the confidence to direct those dogs?
It is so cool to watch them develop. We talked about what happens at the end when they're following us for many years later, but it's interesting when they come in and it might be 35 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, so
Oh,
very cold.
that's
Uh,
mind
you
boggling.
know, yeah, they come here totally unprepared, with, eyes as big as saucers and, the whole 9 yards. They just have no idea what they're getting involved in. And then by the time the course is over, in typical experiential learning fashion, you will see somebody that is just so unprepared at the very beginning to becoming almost an expert, at least very proficient in the task by the time it's over, because it's a semester long program.
Mm.
So, 10, 12, 14 weeks, however long that is. And it's just so cool to see how that progression happens. They're literally getting their snow legs, as we call it. They're learning by trial and error. At the very beginning, they're crashing on the sleds and,
Yep.
worried about being afraid and all of these things. And by the end, man, they're picking their own teams and acting like they're the boss and, the whole thing. And it's just such a cool experience.
That is brilliant. And I can imagine the personal growth that comes through that and the confidence would then spill out into the rest of their lives as well. Now, let's swing that back then to midlifers. Do you get many people who, like you, went back to start studying in their 40s or 50s or beyond, coming into your course?
We have had several since, especially at the class at the University of Alaska, since that is open enrollment. We've had,
Mhm.
I don't know how many professors take our classes
Oh, wow.
or teachers. It's more of a commuter type college, so it's not
Yes.
just the early 20-year-old kids that are in college there. It could be anybody, like students like myself when I went back. So we see a little bit more of an age difference there, and it is so cool to see them grow as well, because for many of those guys and gals, they have been on the other end. They have been
Mm.
professors. They've been in that role for so long, and to get them back into the classroom and trying things that they haven't done for years is a very interesting experience. And as we promote in our classes, our goal is to have you leave better and more prepared in whatever level that is than you were when you got there. And when we're teaching leadership, one of the key components that we do is every class, we always talk about it's a three-step process. We say, what, so what, now what? It's kind of an experiential learning
Yeah.
activity. So what did you learn today? Why is that important? So why is that important? And how are you going to use it tomorrow in whatever capacity? Because the part of our team building in terms of the class itself is to be able to use this dog team, this mushing course, to be able to take away and use it tomorrow in whatever capacity you're using.
The average person isn't going to be dealing with dogs every day of the week, but to be able to have actual transferable skills that they've identified now, that's not just something they're discovering at the end of their college degree, like, oh, yeah, actually, I did learn a bit about leadership, but I love that you're identifying the things they're learning now so they can apply it now in their lives. So, the midlifers that come in, do you find that they are intimidated coming back into a study situation at their age? Are they intimidated with these younger kids around them? I ask that because I went back to study when I was 43 when I made my first midlife reinvention, been just did a year to retrain to work as a personal trainer. And I found that first couple of weeks, like, wow, I really had to deal with the fact that I was being a beginner again. And I was surrounded by all these amazing sporty kids, and I was expected to still be able to perform to a certain degree. And that was quite intimidating. I had to really push myself to get through that discomfort to really settle in then and enjoy the process. Did you experience any of that yourself, or did the midlifers, are you seeing that in them when they arrive?
Yeah, really on both sides. And using myself as sort of a case study there, when I went back to school at 44, I was in an outdoor leadership program. So I was in a program with a bunch of, 19 to 24-year-old kids. When I went into that role, I I had 20 years of experience, life experience to think about. And these young folks, they were just starting in their career. So I remember in those early days of returning to college, talking to professors and instructors and trying to figure out where I fit in. I would say, hey, Mr. Jones, here I am, 45 years old. How am I supposed to interact? Right? I've been a dad. I've been a business owner. How am I supposed to interact with these younger folks? And it took some time to figure that out because we spent a lot of time in the outdoors. We would go out on expeditions of a couple of weeks. And when you're looking looked at it kind of in that dad role and that father role, it takes some getting used to because you want as much as possible for these guys to be your peers. But, when you're double their age, sometimes that's a little difficult. So that was a real learning curve on my part. And I remember a couple of years ago, we had an English professor come out, and she was very good at her job. She was one of the top of her game at the university. And I remember her saying to me, and she says, "Man, it's been a very long time since I had to be a student, since I
Mm.
had to see my role as, I don't want to say less than, but definitely not to, the cream of the crop, top of the game level, if you will. Just, being somebody that wasn't making the decisions all the time, I guess is the best way to say it. And as we're going through midlife and, like you say, rocking midlife, it's a humbling experience to be able to realize that, man, I thought I knew everything, but I don't know everything. And if you remember, back when we were teenagers, we were thinking the same thing. I
Mhm.
know everything, and mom and dad don't. And it's interesting how we get to that level and have to shift again.
Oh, absolutely. I remember just because it was a totally different subject matter for me too. So all of a sudden I was learning about anatomy and all different things around sports and the body and all these things. Things that I kind of knew vaguely from doing biology back in high school and being a functioning adult. I know things, but I had done a 4-year degree in music and music education. So this was totally different. And the sitting down and having to make my brain focus and yeah, think this is actually not an area I know about. And it was humbling. And here's this 20-year-old who has been living, breathing sports exercise for the last 4 years during their high school training. Obviously is quite familiar with the subject. And my knowledge of sport at that point was being the gym and the soccer mum who drove my kids around everywhere and fed them and did their laundry and cheered on the sidelines. So it was very humbling to go, I don't actually know this. I don't know this subject matter. That kid knows it better than I do. And yet not give up at the same time, but to press forward and remind myself, okay, I don't know it, but I will know it if I use that capability that I know that I have of being able to learn. Did you see any midlifers get very caught up in their own heads when they came to college, like very nervous, second guessing themselves, like even just using computers and things like that?
I can only speak for myself. Imposter syndrome is a big deal in
Yes.
education, whether you're in a bachelor's level course as a midlife student or working your way through a graduate program like a master's or a doctorate or whatever. It is humbling, and it can definitely change your focus. And I remember telling my wife Michelle when I went back to school, she said, "What are you doing this for?" And I said, "Well, this is sort of my midlife crisis." I said, "I could have gone out and bought a Corvette,
Yeah,
but
but where are you going to
instead I went
drive it in
back."
all of that snow?
Yes, I could have went and spent, $60,000 for a new Corvette, but look at all of this extra stuff I
Yeah.
gained by doing this. This extra knowledge, these extra connections, this network, this ability to teach the next generation of people. It was just so impactful to my own life
Mm.
that here we are. I'm sitting here talking to you about it today, and it is such a cool way to live this. I don't know if it's the second chapter of our lives being in, I'm in my early 50s now, or the third chapter, or wherever we're at. It's a cool way to go through life, through these cycles, and try to not only learn from each other, but through everyone around us for sure.
Oh, yes, I heartily agree with you on that. And as to second chapter, third chapter, I don't know. I'm getting a little nervous because I hit 60 in October, and that's what I'm trying to work out. Like, okay, so what's that? Is that like officially a senior now, or
Right?
And at the end of the day, it's a label. It's a label, isn't it? And but you touched on something that I has always meant a lot to me because I know that when I did that risk to step out and go back to study and try something different, and with all the humbling and all the nerves that went with it, and the fact that in real life I'm actually an introvert, so I had to actually get out of my house and go do that. The ripple effect of that, though, is exactly what you said. Here I am now meeting amazing people from around the world, able to talk to them, able to write books, able to speak at different things, and hopefully make a difference through what I've done. I don't think I would have had that opportunity if I'd just stayed doing what I was doing. And it's just so wonderful when the brave step you make in midlife can ripple out and affect other people. I can imagine you never would have thought that when you got your first dog all those years ago, or when you did the dare with your daughter, oh, what the heck, let's go have a race to get through college, that the ripple effect of what you're doing.
It has been one amazing journey for sure,
Yeah.
and I've been a podcast for many years. We started our first podcast in 2009. We have never missed in all those years. I don't
Wow.
know if that's a curse
No,
to
that is my hat off to you because I certainly couldn't keep that up. That's incredible.
with that has come so many connections.
Yeah.
I've met so many people over the world, people like you, Kat, in New Zealand, and talking to guests in South Africa and
Yeah.
South America, Europe, and all over the place. And I am a firm believer that storytelling in whatever capacity, whether you're a college instructor or a podcaster or a lecturer or a public speaker or whatever you're doing, being able to share experiences, whether we're talking about midlife or college or whatever, that's how we learn as a
Yes.
society, is to be able to learn from each other through our stories. And it is such a cool way to do that, whether we're on podcasts like yours and ours, or just meeting somebody at a coffee shop and they say, "Hey, my name is Robert. What do you do?"
Yeah.
And that can open up such a conversation, and who knows where it will lead. I mean, you
Yeah.
could become fast friends and having barbecues in the backyard, or business associates, or who knows what, right?
Absolutely. And, people that you meet, like you said, just by stepping out and trying these things and doing these things, it's just incredible the people that come into your life. And it gives purpose to what you're doing too, which is really important to me, to feel like there's some purpose, that you're not just doing it for the heck of it, but you're doing something that's going to have a ripple effect. It's going to help somebody else or encourage somebody else or just cheer them up or whatever it is. Now, I've got one random question. One thing I've talked about a lot in my community, I've got a women's group called Rocking Midlife, the community on Facebook, and we've got thousands of women there from all around the world. And often I talk about pets with them because it's one thing I've noticed. A lot of women find themselves alone at midlife, either through divorce or being widowed or simply having been single all this time. And it just feels like the friends have thinned out a bit. And a lot of women end up getting pets. A lot of them seem to go for the little dogs, or they'll have cats or things. And, there's a real connection there that they're looking for. And what would you say? Do you see that as something that's valuable, the companionship of having an animal like a dog or a cat or something for midlifers, just from your work? I know this is random, but I'd just be interested in your perspective.
Well, of course, I'm not prepared for any of these questions whatsoever, but there has to be something to the 20,000 years that we have had relationships with dogs
Yeah.
in particular. I know a whole lot about cats. I'm definitely more of a dog, quote unquote, expert than a cat
Yes.
expert. But, you know, our goal in our dog training business is we say every single time on our podcast, our job is to help you make the best relationship possible with your dog. And
Yeah.
that's our goal, to build those relationships up. And I think a lot of people, especially as you mentioned, folks that may be single or have a lot of time on their hands for one reason or another, they acquire dogs to fill a need,
Mm.
a um a I want to say a void in their life for one
Yeah.
reason or another, and then they quickly find out that a whole new world opens up
Mm.
of possibility, whether it's just going out and walking around the park with your dog or whatever. And that's why we have dogs for all of these thousands of years, is to work in conjunction with. And I think it's such a cool way to have a relationship with an animal that typically does not say no, does not
Yeah.
speak back to, does not argue with us.
That's
And
good.
it's an interesting way to go through life, to have a relationship where a species is totally dependent on you, like a dog is,
Mm.
but also allows you to have so much independence in your own life, whether it's getting out and exercising or meeting people or whatever. It is a very cool relationships that we have with those companions for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, sorry to throw extras at you, but I just know from my years of talking to the women in the group, and now and then I'll just ask them to share photos of their pets. And oh my gosh, the woman that you never hear about on any other topic, she's there. This is my dog. He's this, he's that. And it's really incredible how much love and companionship these women experience from the pets, particularly those women who are alone. So yeah, I think it's just worth acknowledging how valuable that is. Look, there's so many different tangents we could go, but I really, really appreciate you making the time to speak to me, and I would really love it. What would be like one or two key takeaways that you would want to leave for any midlifers that are listening in, either from your own experience of going back and retraining, or your experience of working with dogs, just from in general?
Uh, One of my most favorite quotes is by an Arctic explorer. His name is Colonel Norman Vaughan, and his quote that he's attributed to is "Dream big and dare to fail." Because as we go through these chapters in our lives, and of course this is a midlife podcast,
Yeah.
and both of you and I are there, so we have to dream big at
Yeah.
this stage in our life. We have to think, what is going to be over the horizon? What do we have to think about tomorrow? And how are we going to get there on whatever capacity, whether it's a relationship with our family, if it's travel, if it's a new job or a new assignment, whatever it is, jump into that with 2 feet and do your best to do as best as you can at that task. And I think that is truly where you dream big and you just dare to fail. You can't fail without trying, and I think that's a huge takeaway.
Oh,
Another takeaway I have is don't be afraid to learn from other people, whether it be through podcasting or through schooling or online communities or blogging, as you mentioned. There is just so much information out there that we can learn from each other. And I know you said you're an introvert, and podcasting is great for introverts,
mm-hmm.
but to when you have to shine, if you will, on a podcast every week or every month or whatever you're doing it, you're the one in the pilot seat. You're the one in control. And it truly is getting you out of your comfort zone, if you will, to host this podcast. And I'm sure it's opened up a lot of opportunities for you. And I think that those are big takeaways. Don't be afraid to shine, and don't be afraid to dream. I think those are my big
Perfect.
takeaways.
Perfect. Mic drop. Boom. Done.
Thank
Thank you so much. That was just fantastic. I so appreciate your time. And I really encourage anybody listening in, please go check out Dr. Robert's site, check out his Instagram. I was having a look at it before with all the snaps of what he's doing up there in Alaska. And I noticed like there's so much more. I'd love to get you back on actually, because I noticed your bucket list on your website. And I think that's a whole other thing that would be really cool to dive into. So yeah, make sure you jump on in there. Is there anything else that you suggest that people go look at in particular?
You can find me here at Robert Forto. That is Forto. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes,
All the
but
links
I'm
will be
on
there. Yeah.
social. Real easy to find, and I would love to interact and connect with you guys and answer questions or whatever you have. I look forward to it.
Wonderful. So there you go, folks. Don't waste time. Make sure you get those links below, whichever platform you are listening to or watching on. And we will see you back next week on the next episode of the Rocking Midlife podcast.
Thank you very much.